I am Madison, 30 years old, elementary school teacher in a small town in Texas. Jake is my fiance, a police officer whom the whole town trusts. My wedding was the town's biggest event of the year, but I saw Jake kissing Lily in the churchyard. Instead of making a scene, I drove away in my red Mustang, disappeared from the wedding and disappeared from town. Years later, as a different woman in the big city, I returned, not to make amends, but to face the town, my family, and the dark secrets that Lily had always been blamed for. If you love real-life stories, chilling revenge, and dark family secrets, hit that subscribe button now. You're about to step into a world where the truth is far more terrifying than fiction. I was 8 years old the first time someone told me I was the good one. It was Mrs. Harper, our neighbor across the street in Willow Creek, a tiny town that always smelled like dust and gasoline. I was standing on her front porch holding a plate of chocolate chip cookies Mom had baked when she opened the door and smiled down at me with that soft church Sunday smile. "Well, if it isn't our little angel," she said, patting my hair. "You're such a good girl, Madison. Not like that Lily of yours always running wild." She laughed like it was a harmless joke. And back then I laughed too. I was proud of being the good one. I thought it meant I was loved more. I didn't know yet that good could become a cage. Growing up, Willow Creek was the kind of town where everyone knew what color pajamas you wore and what you'd scored on your algebra test. News traveled faster than lightning and hit just as hard. There was one diner, one church, one grocery store, and way too many opinions. My parents worked hard to keep their heads above water. Dad was a mechanic at the only auto shop around. Mom worked as a receptionist at the local clinic. We weren't poor, but we weren't the kind of people anyone wrote about in the town's newsletter either. Just, they're ordinary. Then there was us, me and Lily. I was the A student, the one who always raised her hand, who said yes, ma'am, and no, sir, who did extra credit and volunteered at the library. I wore my hair in a neat ponytail, my shirts ironed and tucked in. Lily was the one who got caught smoking behind the gym at 14, who came home with ripped jeans and smudged eyeliner, who laughed too loud and talked back when she felt like it. She was beautiful in a way that scared people, wild alive too much. And every time she messed up, the same script played out in our kitchen. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" Mom would snap, slamming a dish into the sink. Then she'd turn to me with a soft sigh. "Thank God for you, Madison. If it weren't for you, I don't know what I'd do." I used to beam inside when she said that. Later, I learned what it actually meant. You're the one we're counting on. You're the one who has to make us look good. You're the one who's not allowed to fall apart. Jake entered my life when I was 19. Back then, he wasn't Officer Jake Turner, the town's golden boy. He was just the guy who changed the oil in his truck at Dad's shop and leaned against the garage door watching me read during my summer breaks from college. He was 3 years older than me, broad-shouldered with sun-tanned skin, and that easy grin that made old ladies call him such a nice young man. He'd joined the local police department after a year of drifting, and the town loved him for it. Willow Creek clung to its good men in uniform like a badge of honor. "You read a lot," he'd said one steamy July afternoon, wiping grease from his hands and nodding toward my book. "Doesn't your head get tired?" "It gets tired when I talk to people who don't," I'd replied without looking up. He laughed loud and surprised. "Damn, you're funny, Maddie." No one called me funny back then. I was responsible, sweet, polite. With Jake, I got to be something else. Our first date was at the diner. He ordered a cheeseburger and a chocolate milkshake. I ordered a salad I didn't want because I thought that's what a proper girlfriend would do. He teased me until I stole half his fries. With Jake, I felt chosen. Like everything I'd done right, all the ways I'd tried to be good had led to this. A real boyfriend, a future, a life. My parents loved him from the second he shook Dad's hand and said, "Sir, I just want you to know I'm serious about your daughter." Mom practically glowed. "A police officer, Madison. You're so lucky." Even Lily liked him at first. The first time I saw them together, it was at a backyard barbecue. I came out with a bowl of potato salad and saw Lily leaning against the fence, cigarette dangling from her fingers, while Jake stood across from her grinning as she told some wild story about getting kicked out of a bar in Houston. They both burst out laughing at the same time, heads tilted back in the same way. I remember a little ping of something in my chest, jealousy maybe or fear, but I brushed it away. It was Lily. It was Jake. They were just different parts of my world. I didn't imagine those parts could ever collide. Years went by. I finished my degree in education, came back to Willow Creek and got a job at the elementary school. The kids loved me. The parents approved. The principal called me the kind of teacher this town needs. Jake moved up in the department, taking on more responsibility, more cases. People talked about him like he was some kind of small-town hero. He helped old Mrs. Carter get her cat down from a tree, broke up fights at the high school, checked on lonely veterans who lived alone in trailers off the highway. By the time I turned 28, everyone was asking the same question. So when's the wedding? I didn't pressure him. At least that's what I told myself. But some nights, lying awake staring at the ceiling fan spinning shadows over the walls, I'd imagine a white dress, flowers, a church full of people seeing me, not as the good daughter, not as the reliable teacher, but as a bride, as someone who'd finally arrived. He proposed the day after Christmas on the front porch, while the town lights still twinkled on Main Street. My parents were inside pretending not to watch through the curtains. He got down on one knee, snow dusting his shoulders, blue eyes bright beneath his beanie, the diamond ring, small but sparkling, lay in a velvet box in his gloved hand. "Maddie," he said, voice shaking just enough to make it seem real. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. I want to build a life with you. Marry me." And even though something in my gut fluttered uneasily, I ignored it. "Yes," I said, "of course yes." Mom cried. Dad clapped Jake on the back so hard I thought he might dislocate his shoulder. Even Lily hugged me long and tight, whispering, "You deserve this, you know that." I wanted to believe her. The months leading up to the wedding were a blur of white fabric and floral samples and guest lists. The whole town was invited, of course. It was Willow Creek's event of the year. The local paper wrote a little feature about us. Officer Turner to wed local teacher. There was a picture of us in front of the church. Me in a blue dress, Jake in uniform, his arm wrapped around my waist. I smiled in the photo. I remember that smile. It looked like it belonged in a magazine. Perfect, pleased, secure. I didn't see the cracks then. I didn't see the way Jake's jaw tightened when I asked to keep my last name. I didn't see how often he checked his phone, eyes darkening at messages he never shared with me. I didn't see the way his gaze lingered on Lily at the engagement party just a moment too long. Or maybe I saw it all. Maybe I just chose not to look too closely. The morning of the wedding, the sky was a clear, impossible blue. The church was decorated with white roses and eucalyptus, the kind my Pinterest boards had been obsessed with for years. The smell of flowers and polished wood hung in the air like a promise. I stood in the tiny dressing room behind the sanctuary, staring at myself in the mirror. The dress was fitted at the waist with lace sleeves and a modest neckline. Elegant, timeless. According to the boutique owner, my hair was curled and pinned half up, half down, dotted with little pearl pins. Makeup soft and natural, like I'd just woken up glowing. "You look like a princess," Mom said behind me, her reflection hovering over my shoulder. I smiled. It didn't quite reach my eyes. "Lily's running late," she added, checking her phone. Of course, I swear that girl is allergic to being on time. Something in my chest tightened. "She said she'd be here," I replied. "She promised," Mom sighed. "Promises and your sister don't exactly go hand in hand, honey." I wanted to defend Lily, but the words stuck in my throat. Old habits die hard. There was a knock on the door, and then Dad's head poked in. "You ready, kiddo?" he asked, eyes suspiciously shiny. In a minute, I said, "Can I have a second alone?" They both nodded and stepped out, closing the door softly behind them. For a moment there was silence, just me and my reflection and the sound of my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. This is it, I thought. This is the day your whole life changes. Only I didn't know yet how right I was. I don't even know what made me walk outside. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was something deeper, something that had been trying to warn me for years. The ceremony was scheduled to begin in 20 minutes. Guests were already filling the pews. I could hear the low hum of voices through the walls. Our vows were tucked safely into Jake's jacket pocket. The photographer was circling somewhere, capturing candid shots. There was a side door near the back of the church leading out to the small garden my mom had insisted on decorating with white lanterns and fairy lights. "It'll make the perfect photo backdrop," she'd said. I slipped through that door, lifting my dress slightly so it wouldn't drag on the stone steps. The air outside was crisp but gentle, the sun warm on my face. For a brief second, I just breathed, letting the coolness settle my nerves. Then I heard it, a low voice, a laugh, a hushed, urgent whisper. I froze. The garden wrapped around the back of the church, hidden from the parking lot by a row of hedges. I followed the sound without thinking, my heart knocking harder against my ribs with each step. As I rounded the corner, I saw them, Jake, Lily. They were standing beneath the old oak tree, the one the landscaper had wrapped with white fairy lights like a glowing spine. Lily was in her bridesmaid dress, dusty rose silk that hugged her curves, her dark hair twisted into some messy updo that made her look like she'd just rolled out of bed. In the most devastating way. Jake stood close still in his shirt and vest jacket draped over a nearby chair. He had his hand on her waist. She had her hand on his chest. Their foreheads were almost touching. "I can't keep doing this," Lily whispered, her voice cracking. "It's killing me." "You think this is easy for me?" Jake said, his jaw tense. "You think I don't—" He didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he pulled her closer, and then he kissed her. Not a quick, panicked peck. Not an awkward, accidental brush of lips. He kissed her like he meant it. Like he'd done it 1,000 times before. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. My stomach dropped. The world tilted sideways. I couldn't breathe. I just stood there frozen, watching my fiancé, my almost husband, kiss my little sister in the garden behind the church where I was supposed to become his wife. I don't know how long it lasted. A second, an hour, a lifetime. When they finally broke apart, Lily's cheeks were wet. Jake's face was twisted with something I couldn't name. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "Not to her. Not to me. Not to any of us." "We've talked about this," he said, running a hand through his hair. "It's done. Today is happening. After this, we keep our distance. We move on. You'll meet someone else. This is just how it has to be." "Just how it has to be," she repeated, her laugh, bitter and quiet. "You sound like Dad when he talks about bills." He sighed. "Lily." "No," she said, stepping back. "You're right. Today is happening. Go marry her. Go be the hero." He reached for her again, but she turned her face away. For a split second, his eyes lifted and locked with mine. Everything went silent. No birds, no wind, no voices from the church. Just the roar of my blood in my ears. "Madison," he breathed, face draining of color. Lily spun around, eyes wide, mascara already smudging. "Maddie, I can explain," she stammered, reaching for me. "Please, just don't," I said. Just one word, sharp, cold, unfamiliar in my own mouth. They both stopped. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my bouquet or slap anyone or collapse to my knees like in some dramatic TV movie. My body moved with a calmness that terrified me. I turned around, walked back the way I'd come, opened the side door, stepped into the hallway behind the sanctuary. Inside, the organist was warming up. Someone laughed near the entrance. The smell of perfume and cologne wafted through the air. My dad was waiting near the back, hands clasped in front of him, suit slightly too big. Tie crooked. "There you are," he said, relief spreading across his features. We were starting to worry. "You okay, kiddo?" I looked at him, at his hopeful eyes, at the white runners stretching down the aisle, at the bouquets on the ends of the pews, at the altar where I was supposed to say I do. I smiled. It was the steadiest smile I'd ever given anyone in my life. "No," I said quietly, "but I will be." Before he could ask what I meant, I hiked up my dress, turned on my heel, and walked straight down the side aisle. Not toward the altar, but toward the back doors of the church. I heard someone call my name. Then another voice. My mother's startled gasp, the rustle of fabric as people shifted in their seats. But I didn't stop. I pushed the heavy wooden doors open and stepped out into the blinding daylight, my car a beat-up red Mustang. Dad and I had spent a year fixing up, was parked near the back of the gravel lot decorated with a "just married" sign and dangling tin cans that clinked together in the breeze. I'd imagined driving away in it with Jake's hand on my knee, laughing as the cans bounced along the road behind us. Instead, I kicked off my heels, yanked open the driver's side door, and climbed in with my dress bunched up around me like a cloud that was trying to choke me. My hands shook as I turned the key, but the engine roared to life like it had been waiting for this moment all along. For a second, I hesitated. My eyes lifted to the rearview mirror. In it, I could see my own face. Makeup, perfect hair, perfect veil pinned in place. A perfect bride. Behind me, through the church doors that were now wide open, I could see a blur of people starting to spill out. Confused, anxious, craning their necks. Somewhere inside that building were my parents. The children I taught dressed in their best clothes. The town that had watched me grow up, my sister, my almost husband. All of them waiting for me to be the good girl one more time, to turn around, to forgive, to make it easy for everyone. I dropped my gaze. My foot hit the gas. The Mustang lurched forward, gravel sprang behind me like small stones of freedom. The cans clattered and screamed against the pavement as I sped out of the lot onto the road and then onto the two-lane highway that led out of Willow Creek. In the rearview mirror, the church grew smaller and smaller until it was nothing more than a white speck against the infinite blue sky. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what would happen next. All I knew was that I was done being the good one. That was the day I became the runaway bride on Highway 17. The day I left everything behind. The day my story really started. I didn't stop driving until Willow Creek was nothing more than a fading bruise in my rearview mirror. I don't remember most of that drive, only fragments. The musty smell of my bouquet wilting in the passenger seat, the oppressive weight of my dress around my legs, the metallic rattle of the cans trailing behind me until they ripped off one by one. I remember the wind roaring through the half-open window, lifting my veil like a ghost clawing to stay attached. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tightly the bones in my hands ached. Mostly, though, I remember the silence inside me. A thick, hollow silence, like someone had scooped out everything. My heart, my pride, my hope, and left nothing but an echo. I crossed 2 counties before pulling into a deserted rest stop. I parked sideways across 2 spots, Bridezilla style, I guess, and killed the engine. The sudden stillness made my ears ring. When I opened the door, the skirt of my dress dragged on the concrete. Picking up dirt and gravel, I walked barefoot to the vending machine, pressed my forehead against the cool glass, and breathed in slow, shaky gulps. A man getting out of his truck stared at me, wide-eyed, like I'd just escaped an asylum. "You okay there, miss?" he asked cautiously. I wanted to say, "No, I am not okay. My fiancé kissed my sister 20 minutes before our vows, and now I'm running away from my entire life," but instead I just nodded. "I'm fine," I lied, "just big day." He stared a little longer, then shrugged and walked off. That was the moment it hit me. No one knew me here. No one cared. No one saw me as the good one, or the dutiful one, or the bride who ran from her own wedding. I was just a woman in a ruined dress breathing through her own destruction, and for reasons I still don't fully understand, that anonymity felt like the first breath I'd taken in years. I spent the night in a cheap motel off Highway 17, the kind with flickering neon signs and cigarette burns on the bedspread. I locked the door twice, pulled the blinds shut, and sat on the floor with my knees to my chest. My phone buzzed non-stop. Calls from Mom, Dad, Jake, even a few nosy coworkers. Then the messages started coming in. "Maddie, where are you? This is not funny. We need to talk right now. You're embarrassing yourself. Please, please pick up. Come back before people notice. Everyone is worried about you." Not one person said, "What happened? Are you okay?" Not one person asked why the bride had driven off alone. I guess they assumed I was the problem, the unstable one. The good girl turned hysterical. After the 50th call from Mom, I powered the phone off and threw it into the trash can. Not even the motel Bible went in that cleanly. Then I took a pair of motel scissors from the front desk and cut off my dress. Not all of it, just the bottom half. The heavy lace skirt that had dragged under my heels all day, I cut it until it hung jagged around my knees, raw and uneven like the ripped edges of my life. The corset top stayed mostly because I liked the way it hugged my body. It made me look armored, and I needed armor. When the sun rose the next morning, I put on my sneakers, grabbed my car keys, and left Willow Creek behind for good. Dallas wasn't the plan. Nothing was the plan. But when I reached the interchange, the sign pointing toward the city shone like a dare. So I took it. I found a tiny studio apartment above a Vietnamese bakery in Old East Dallas. The landlord didn't ask questions, and I didn't give him answers. I paid 2 months' rent with the emergency savings Jake and I had built together. I felt sick doing it, using money that was partly his. But then I remembered his hands on Lily's waist, and the sickness turned into resolve. I got a job at an after-school tutoring center. Kids trusted me easily. Maybe because I still had that teacher face. The one that said everything was fine, even when nothing was. The first week, the director asked, "So what brings you to Dallas?" I smiled, a fresh start. I didn't elaborate, and she didn't push. That became my whole personality. The woman who didn't push. The woman who didn't ask. The woman who rebuilt quietly. But inside, the silence was changing. Hardening. Something sharp began forming where the hollow part had been. 3 months after the wedding. That wasn't. I was in my apartment eating banh mi from the bakery downstairs when I saw it. A news article. Not national news, not even regional. Just a small hometown piece shared by a mutual friend's Facebook. Officer Turner leads drug bust hero of Willow Creek. There was a photo of Jake smiling in front of the police station. And beside him, because the universe has a cruel sense of humor, was Lily. She wasn't handcuffed. She wasn't arrested. She was interviewing him, microphone in hand. Hair perfect, smiling at him. She'd gotten a job at the local news station. I nearly choked on my sandwich. The next picture in the article was worse. A candid shot of Jake's hand brushing her elbow. Friendly, familiar, too familiar. A few commenters wrote things like, "They look good together. She always belonged on camera. I'm so glad he's doing well after what happened." After what happened? What happened was that he kissed my sister. What happened was that I walked away. Yet somehow the narrative had twisted into something else. Something that made me the villain of my own heartbreak. I slammed my laptop shut and paced my tiny apartment, my breath coming fast and shallow. I had left to save myself, but it felt like I'd handed them my silence on a silver platter. I had disappeared. They had rewritten the story, and people had believed it. That was the night I realized I wasn't done with Willow Creek. Not by a long shot. For a while, revenge wasn't a plan. It was a pulse, a faint heartbeat in the back of my mind. Every time I thought I'd buried it, something new resurrected it. A wedding photo someone uploaded to Facebook. A rumor that I'd had a breakdown. A church member claiming I'd run off because I couldn't handle adult life. Nobody mentioned Jake. Nobody mentioned Lily. Nobody mentioned the truth. Humiliation is fuel. Silence is gasoline. I was slowly becoming a bonfire waiting for a match. 6 months passed like that, me pretending to move on while secretly obsessively stalking the town's social media pages. One evening when summer heat pressed against the city like a heavy hand, I got an email. I didn't recognize the address, but the subject line made my stomach flip. "I need to talk to you, Lily." I hovered over the message for a full minute before opening it. "Maddie, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. But something's happened with Mom. She's in the hospital. It's bad. Dad says not to bother you, but he's being... well, Dad, I think you should know. Please call me. I'm sorry for everything, Lily." My heart tightened. Mom was sick. Hospitalized. For what? Why hadn't Dad told me? Why hadn't anyone told me? I stared at the email, waiting for anger to rise, for hurt to swell. But what came instead was something I didn't expect. Fear. Then grief. Then the cold reality that no matter how far I drove, family still had the power to pull me back. I closed my laptop and sat on the edge of my bed, elbows on my knees, hands covering my face. I didn't want to go back, but I couldn't ignore this. Still, something about the email gnawed at me. Lily sounded frightened. Not just guilty, not just apologetic, scared. And Lily didn't get scared easily. My breath caught. What if Mom wasn't the only reason she'd reached out? What if something else had happened? Something only I could help her with. Something she didn't trust anyone else to know. That thought chilled me more than the betrayal ever did. As I sat there, the Dallas night buzzing with distant traffic, and the smell of bakery bread drifting up through the floorboards, a truth settled deep inside me. Running away hadn't freed me. It had only postponed the inevitable. Sooner or later, I would have to face Willow Creek again. The people who misunderstood me, the town that judged me, the man who broke me, the sister who betrayed me. and the secrets they had all tried to bury. But next time I wouldn't return as the good girl, not as the accommodating daughter, not as the bride who drove away. No, when I went back, I'd go as someone new, someone sharper, someone unafraid, someone who had learned that being good had never protected me, but being quiet had nearly destroyed me. I opened my phone, powered it on for the first time in months, and typed a single message: "I'm coming." I didn't send it to Lily. I sent it to myself as a promise, a vow, one I intended to keep, because I could feel it now. The match had finally struck, and Willow Creek had no idea what was coming. I drove back to Willow Creek on a Thursday morning, 9 months after I'd left it in ruins. The sun hadn't fully risen yet. The sky was a smear of pink and violet, swollen with the kind of humidity that clung to your lungs. The highway stretched out in front of me like a scar, familiar, ugly, impossible to forget. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles whitened. My hands remembered this drive. My body remembered the ache. I wondered if anyone would recognize the Mustang I'd peeled off the "just married" sticker months ago. But there were still faint glue marks you could see in the right light. Ghostly remnants of a life that never happened. Willow Creek hadn't changed. That was its curse. The same faded billboards, the same rusted gas station sign, the same diner with its peeling blue paint and decade-old special Meatloaf Friday. The same suffocating sense that time moved everywhere else except here. I slowed as I approached the edge of town. The wooden "Welcome to Willow Creek, a good place to call home" sign leaned slightly to the right, like it had grown tired of its own positivity. As I passed it, a strange sensation washed over me, half dread, half anticipation. I wasn't the same girl who had fled in a torn wedding dress. I wasn't here to be forgiven. I wasn't here to explain myself. This time I wasn't the one who was afraid. But even as I told myself that, my stomach twisted when I turned into my parents' street. The houses were lined up like obedient soldiers, manicured lawns, identical mailboxes, small-town perfection, desperately covering decades of secrets and rot. Dad's truck was in the driveway. Lily's red sedan sat crookedly beside it, and my mother's welcome mat, "Bless this home," was faded, but still there, judging me silently like it always had. I parked at the curb and stepped out. The air tasted like memory. The moment I knocked, the door flew open. Madison, Mom, nearly collapsed against me, her arms thin and trembling. She smelled like Vicks, Vapo Rub, and lavender detergent, childhood and hospital rooms all at once. I caught her before she fell. "Mom, I'm fine," she lied, her voice raspy. "Well, I'm not fine, but I'm alive. Come in, honey." She ushered me inside before I could say anything else. The living room looked exactly as I remembered. Same beige carpet, same ugly brown recliner Dad refused to replace, same family photo above the fireplace, where I was smiling too big, and Lily looked like she wanted to run. Dad stood near the recliner, hands tucked into his pockets, shoulders rigid. "Well," he said, clearing his throat, "look who finally decided to come home." And there it was, the judgment, the resentment he didn't even try to hide. I didn't respond. I didn't trust what might come out of my mouth if I did. Then Lily stepped out from the hallway. The air shifted. She looked older. Not physically. She was still the same pretty, chaotic whirlwind, but something in her eyes had dimmed, like someone had taken a flame and cupped their hand around it, suffocating it slowly. "Hey," she whispered. I stared at her. My sister. My betrayer. The person I had once shared a bedroom, secrets, fights, birthdays, and worse nightmares with. Up close, her makeup was smudged like she'd been crying, or hadn't slept, or both. "Hi." I said the word sharper than I intended. We held eye contact for a moment too long, long enough for truths neither of us wanted to name to throb between us. Mom broke the tension by guiding me to the couch. "She had a spell last night," Lily said quietly, standing behind Mom. "Fainted in the kitchen. Hit her head." Mom waved a hand. "I'm sure it was nothing, just dehydration." "You weren't dehydrated, Mom," Lily whispered. "Your blood pressure." I said it was nothing. Mom snapped, her eyes flashing. Then she softened and patted the cushion beside her. "Sit down, Maddie." I sat. Lily remained standing, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to keep from unraveling. Dad lowered himself into his recliner without a word. The silence that settled was thick and sour. "How long has this been going on?" I asked finally, my voice low. Mom hesitated, then shrugged. "A few months, maybe." "A few months," I repeated. "Why didn't anyone call me?" Dad scoffed. "You haven't returned a call in nearly a year." "You stopped calling after 2 weeks," I shot back. Well, what were we supposed to think? He demanded, sitting forward. You ran off embarrassed. All of us didn't give us any explanation. I didn't owe you an explanation, I interrupted. Not after what happened. Dad's jaw tightened. And what did happen? Madison, he asked it like he didn't know, like I'd imagined the whole thing, like the truth was an inconvenience. My chest tightened. You really want to do this here? I asked. He stared at me, unblinking. I want to know why my daughter abandoned her own wedding. Something inside me snapped. I opened my mouth. But before I could unleash everything I'd held inside for 9 months, Lily stepped forward. Dad, she said quietly, please don't. He turned to her. This doesn't concern you. Yes, she whispered, it does. Her voice cracked on the last word. Dad froze. And for the first time since walking into the room, I really looked at my sister. Her shoulders sagged. Her eyes were rimmed red. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides. She looked like someone who'd been living with a truth that was too heavy for her, a truth I had only seen the edge of. Mom cleared her throat, clearly desperate to change the subject. Madison, sweetie, can you stay a few days? Just until I get my strength back. I hesitated. I didn't want to stay. I didn't want to sleep in my childhood room. I didn't want to breathe the same air as the people who had let me bleed quietly for nearly a year. But Mom looked small, fragile. And there was a fear in Lily's eyes that I hadn't seen since we were kids hiding in the closet during one of Dad's angrier nights. So I nodded. Yeah, I said softly, I'll stay. Later. Once Mom was resting and Dad had retreated into the backyard to smoke a cigar. He wasn't supposed to smoke. I stepped into the kitchen to get some water. Lily followed me. The second the doorway closed behind us, she exhaled shakily. Thank you for coming, she murmured. I didn't know who else to. Cut the bullshit, I said, turning to her. What's going on, Lily? She flinched. Good. For once, she didn't hide behind sarcasm or bravado. She just stared at the floor. Mom's not telling the truth, she said finally. She's been fainting, forgetting things, losing her balance. I've taken her to 2 appointments already. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because Dad didn't want to bother you, she said bitterly. And because Mom pretends everything's fine even when she can barely make it to the mailbox. I swallowed hard. And you? I asked. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Her lips trembled. I didn't think you'd answer, she whispered. After everything. Everything. The word hung in the air between us, brittle and enormous. I drew in a shaky breath. You're right, I said. I might not have answered, but you still could have tried. She winced. I should have, she whispered. I know that. And I'm sorry for that, for everything. Her voice cracked again. And suddenly, she looked like the little girl who used to climb into my bed after nightmares. I wanted to stay angry. I deserved to stay angry. But something in the kitchen felt suffocating, like the walls were pressing in on us, forcing the truth out. I leaned against the counter. Was it just once? I asked quietly. The kiss. Lily shook her head. No. My stomach hollowed out. How long? I forced out. She swallowed. 3 years, she whispered. The words landed like a blade between my ribs. 3 years. I closed my eyes, gripping the edge of the counter until my nails dug into the wood. I never meant for it to happen, she said quickly. I swear, Maddie, it wasn't planned. It wasn't. I don't care how it started, I snapped. I care about how it ended. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I ended it, she said. A month before the wedding. I tried to stop seeing him. I told him it was over. I told him he needed to marry you and leave me alone. I let out a laugh so cold it startled even me. So that kiss at the wedding, I said, that was what closure. She pressed a hand to her forehead. I don't know what it was. I was confused. He was confused. No, I said sharply. He wasn't confused. He was selfish. And you. I stopped biting off the rest of the sentence. Fragile silence stretched between us. Finally, Lily whispered, I'm scared, Maddie. Something in her voice, small trembling, knifed through my anger. Scared of what? I asked. She looked up at me then, really looked, and in her eyes I saw something I hadn't expected. Fear. Bone-deep, soul-crushing fear. Jake, she whispered, I'm scared of Jake. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? She glanced over her shoulder as if expecting him to burst through the door. He hasn't let me go, she said. He calls me. Shows up at work. Shows up here. Dad thinks he's just checking in on the family. But he's not. He's angry, Maddie. Really angry, and he blames me for you leaving. He says I ruined everything. He says... She broke off, shaking. I stared at her, my heart pounding. I had always thought Jake's betrayal was personal, an affair, a weakness, a heartbreak. But this control obsession fear, this was something darker, something more dangerous. Slowly, carefully, a truth began knitting itself together in my mind. Maybe I hadn't come back just for Mom. Maybe I hadn't come back just to face my past. Maybe I had come back for a different reason entirely. Not mercy, not closure, but justice. And maybe, just maybe, revenge. Because for the first time, Lily wasn't the wild one. Dad wasn't the stubborn one. Mom wasn't the fragile one. Jake was the problem. And if Jake thought silence had protected him before, he was about to learn what happened when the good girl stopped being good and finally started fighting back. The days after my return unfolded like a slow-burning fuse, one spark after another, each threatening to reach whatever hidden bomb lay in the center of this family. Mom stayed mostly in bed, drifting in and out of sleep, insisting she was just tired. Dad pretended everything was normal, clinging to the routine of tending the lawn, watching the Weather Channel, and making coffee too strong for human consumption. But beneath the surface, nothing was normal. Not Mom's fragile state, not Lily's trembling hands, not the silence that wrapped around us like suffocating fog, and definitely not Jake. Especially not Jake. He showed up the second morning I was home. I had just stepped out onto the porch to get some air. Small-town mornings still smelled like dew and cut grass. And there he was standing near his patrol car, like he'd been waiting for me. The sight of him made my stomach lurch. He hadn't changed much. Still tall, still broad-shouldered, still wearing that uniform like a second skin. But his eyes, blue, steady, always too sure of themselves, looked different now. Harder, sharper. "Madison," he said, voice low, almost gentle. I froze with my hand on the screen door. "Jake," I said flatly. He smiled in a way that used to make me melt. Now it made me want to recoil. "You're back," he said. "Didn't think I'd see you again. I didn't come back for you." He nodded slowly like he expected that. "Well," he said, stepping closer, "I guess I should say, welcome home." Home. What an ugly word. I didn't respond. His gaze drifted toward the window where Mom's silhouette was barely visible through the curtain. "How is she?" he asked. "She's resting," I said, keeping my voice clipped. "She doesn't need stress." "Of course," he murmured. "She's always been good to me." There was a strange emphasis on me that made my skin crawl. Then his eyes traveled back to mine. "You leaving like that?" He paused, searching my face. "It hurt a lot of people, you know." I laughed, a humorless sound. "Did it hurt you, Jake?" His jaw twitched. "That's not what I meant." "You sure?" For a brief second, something flickered in his eyes. Anger. Or maybe warning. Before either of us could say another word, the door behind me creaked open and Lily stepped out. Her presence didn't go unnoticed. Jake's entire body shifted, subtly but noticeably. Shoulders squared, eyes narrowed. "Control, that's what it looked like." "Lily," he said, the softness in his voice gone. "Jake," she whispered, barely above breath. "You haven't returned my calls." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "I've been busy." "Too busy for me?" he asked quietly. I stepped forward, instinctively positioning myself between them. "She doesn't owe you anything," I said sharply. His head tilted, his gaze cutting into me. "And you think you get to decide that?" "I know I do." The tension thickened, heavy enough to choke on. Finally, after a long moment, he exhaled and forced a smile he didn't feel. "Well," he said softly, "I'm sure I'll see you both around." He turned, walked to his car, and drove off. The second the engine faded, Lily sagged against the porch railing. "He's getting worse," she whispered. I didn't argue. I'd seen the truth in his eyes. I spent the rest of the morning going through Mom's medications, checking dates, organizing bottles, and reading discharge notes from her last emergency visit, notes she had hidden in a kitchen drawer under takeout menus. Hypertension. Possible early-stage arrhythmia. Recommendation. Stress reduction monitoring follow-up scans. Follow-up she had never gone to, because she didn't want to worry anyone. Because worry made the family look weak. Because she'd rather collapse in the kitchen than admit she needed help. Silence wasn't passive in my family, it was tradition. I set the papers on the table with a sigh. "You're doing too much," Dad said from behind me. "I didn't turn, am I?" "Doctors make things sound worse than they are," he muttered. "Your mother just needs rest." "She needs more than rest," I said. "She needs medical care. She needs honesty. She needs us to stop pretending everything's fine." Dad's jaw tightened. "Pretending keeps this family together." I faced him. "No, Dad, it's tearing it apart." He shook his head, dismissing me. "You've barely been home 10 minutes, and you think you know what's best. I know what's killing her." His nostrils flared. "Don't," he warned softly. "Don't start something you can't finish." The threat hung between us like smoke. I held his gaze. "I'm not afraid of the truth anymore." He looked away first. That was new. Later that afternoon, Lily and I drove into town for groceries. Mom insisted she didn't want anything, but she'd been craving peach yogurt for weeks and Dad had kept buying the wrong brand. Willow Creek Market looked exactly the same. Sticky tile floors, humming refrigerator shelves stocked with generic versions of brand-name cereal. A bored teenager at the register chewing gum with the emotional depth of a sponge. As we walked in, people stared. Of course they did. The runaway bride had returned. Mrs. Harper, queen of the neighborhood, clamped a hand over her chest and whispered, not very quietly, to her friend, "Oh my goodness, she's back." A group of high school girls giggled near the produce section. Someone else muttered, "Didn't think she had the nerve." I kept walking. Their whispers couldn't hurt me anymore. Not when the truth was so much uglier than their gossip. But Lily, she shrank under the attention, hugging her arms around herself. "They blame me too, you know," she murmured as we picked out apples. "They think I drove you away." "You did," I said before I could stop myself. She flinched. Guilt washed over me almost immediately, but before I could soften it, her phone buzzed. She checked it and her face drained of color. "What?" I asked. She turned the screen toward me. "A message from Jake. Come outside now." My jaw clenched. "He's here?" I asked. She nodded, trembling. I glanced toward the front windows, and there, parked crookedly in a spot closest to the door, was his patrol car. Red and blue authority incarnate, unavoidable. He was standing beside it, leaning against the hood, arms crossed, sunglasses hiding his eyes. Waiting. Commanding. "This has to stop," I muttered. Lily shook her head quickly. "No, Maddie. Please don't. You'll make it worse. You don't know what he's like when—" "I don't need to know," I said. "I saw enough." I marched toward the doors before she could grab my arm. As I pushed them open, the warm air hit me like a slap. Jake looked up. He straightened, removed his sunglasses slowly, deliberately. His eyes weren't warm, they weren't kind, they were territorial. "Where's Lily?" he asked. "She's inside," I said. "Where you're not going." His jaw flexed. "This isn't your business. It became my business the moment you kissed her at my wedding." His face went still blank, dangerous. "You don't know what you saw," he said softly. "I know exactly what I saw." For a long, tense moment, we stared at each other. Then he took a single step closer. "You think coming back changes anything?" he asked. "You think you can just walk in and take control of everything again?" "I'm not here to control anything," I said. "I'm here to protect my family." His laugh was low and humorless. "Your family," he repeated. "You ran away from your family because you tore it apart." Something flickered in his expression, something ugly. "You always were dramatic," he said. "Always needed to feel like the hero, the victim, the martyr. That's rich coming from the man who cheated for 3 years." He moved so fast I barely registered it. One step forward, just close enough to invade my space without crossing a legal boundary. His voice dropped. "You think you're brave now," he said. "You think leaving made you stronger." I held my ground. "I know it did." His eyes darkened. "You don't know what you're stepping into," he whispered. "You don't know what Lily's told you, and you don't know what she's capable of lying about." "Careful," I said, my own voice lowering. "You don't get to twist this." "Oh, sweetheart," he murmured, leaning in just enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar, and mint and betrayal I already have. I stepped back, disgust curling in my stomach. "That's enough," I said. "You're done here. Leave." His jaw tightened. But after a tense second, he slid his sunglasses back on, turned, and got into the patrol car. Before he closed the door, he said one last thing. "This town isn't big enough for all your stories, Madison. So be careful which one you decide to tell." Then he drove off. Hard, fast dust swirling behind the car like smoke from a fuse burning down. Lily ran out the doors the second he was gone. "What did he say?" she demanded, voice shaking. Did he threaten you?" I looked at her. Really looked. The fear, the exhaustion, the guilt. And for the first time, I didn't see the girl who had betrayed me. I saw the girl who had been trapped long before I ever knew it. "It's okay," I said softly. "I've got you." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Maddie." I nodded. "Good," I said, "because now we're going to fix this." She blinked. "Fix it how?" I lifted my chin. "With the truth," I said, "all of it." She stared at me, unsure, afraid, hopeful. "What if no one believes us?" she whispered. "Oh," I said, a slow, cold certainty building in my chest. The kind of certainty only a woman who had lost everything could possess. "They will," I murmured, "because this time I'm not running." And as we stood there in the parking lot beneath the weight of a town full of whispers and the shadow of a man who thought he still owned our stories, I felt the fuse burn down to its final inch. Something was coming, something big, and this time Willow Creek wouldn't be ready for it. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There are countless real-life betrayals, twists, and revenge stories waiting for you in the next episodes. If there's one thing Willow Creek hates more than scandal, it's silence that hints a scandal is coming. And that's exactly the kind of silence that followed Lily and me home from the grocery store. News traveled fast. I could feel it. The way curtains fluttered when we walked by houses, the way cars slowed when they passed us, the way Dad kept glancing at his phone while pretending he wasn't watching us. Something was shifting, not loud enough to name yet, but loud enough to feel beneath the skin. By nightfall, Mom had fallen asleep in the recliner, a blanket tucked around her frail shoulders. Dad sat on the porch pretending to read the newspaper, though his eyes stayed fixed on the same paragraph for over an hour. Lily and I sat at the kitchen table, the overhead light flickering like it was afraid to stay on. "Are you sure we're doing the right thing?" Lily asked, her voice thin and trembling. "What if he's right? What if nobody believes us?" "They don't need to believe us," I said. "They need evidence." She swallowed and, "Do we have that?" I opened the folder I'd been building quietly since the moment I returned. Inside were screenshots of the messages he'd sent Lily, timestamps proving he visited the house unannounced, notes from the doctor that contradicted Dad's claims, the name of a town councilwoman who'd once complained privately about Jake's boundary issues but had never dared go public, and most importantly, a small flash drive containing a recording Lily had made 2 weeks earlier during one of Jake's late-night visits. He didn't know she'd recorded him. He didn't know she still had it. He didn't know I had made a copy of it. He definitely didn't know that the recording would become the final blow. I closed the folder. "We have more than enough," I said. Lily exhaled shakily. "And what exactly is the plan?" I leaned forward. "Tomorrow morning we're going to tell the truth." I said all of it publicly. Her eyes widened. "To who?" "To everyone," I said. "To the police, to the mayor's office, to the press. Whoever listens first." She paled. "Maddie, this town worships Jake. They won't want to hear this." "Then we make them hear," I said. A long silence stretched between us. And then quietly, tentatively, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered, "let's do it." But Willow Creek didn't give us the chance to wait until morning. Around midnight, everything changed. I was lying awake in my childhood room, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck on the ceiling years ago. They were peeling now, edges curled like tired petals. I couldn't sleep. Not with tomorrow looming, not with Jake prowling somewhere in this town like a storm waiting to break. As if summoned by my thoughts, I heard a car engine outside. Not just any engine, the low rumbling purr of a police cruiser. I sat up instantly. A moment later, bang, 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 hard, violent knocks rattled the front door. Lily's voice carried down the hall, small and terrified. "Maddie, he's here." I stepped out of the room, heart pounding so hard I felt it in my teeth. Dad was already heading toward the door. "I'll handle this," he muttered. "No." I started, but he had already swung the door open, and there he was, Jake, standing on the porch, uniform still on, but his eyes, God, his eyes. They were wild, angry, and not the controlled anger I'd seen before. This was feral, unhinged, desperate. "What the hell do you want?" Dad snapped, blocking the doorway. Jake ignored him entirely. His gaze shot past him straight to me. "Madison," he said, "we need to talk." "No," I said firmly, "we don't." His jaw tightened. Then Lily appeared behind me, and everything snapped. He pointed at her, voice rising. "You told her, didn't you? You told her everything." I didn't let Lily answer. I asked her, I said, "She didn't owe you silence anymore." Jake's face twisted. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" "Yes," I said, stopping you. Dad stepped between us, lifting his chin. "You need to leave now." Jake let out a short, humorless laugh. "You think you can tell me what to do on my own? Beat?" he scoffed. "You think this house, this family can keep secrets from me?" Dad moved closer, voice low and dangerous. "You need to get off my property." Jake's eyes flicked between us, calculating, unraveling. "You all think you're heroes now," he hissed. "You think you can turn this town against me." "No," I said, "you did that to yourself." For a moment, just a moment, his facade cracked, and I saw the truth. He wasn't scared of losing us. He was scared of losing power. "You're making a mistake," he spat. "No," I said, stepping forward. "You made the first mistake 3 years ago. We're just correcting it." He clenched his fists. And I realized then he hadn't come to talk. He'd come to intimidate, to scare, to corner. But he forgot something important. I wasn't the same girl he had once cornered. I wasn't alone, and I wasn't scared anymore. "Get off the property," Turner, Dad said again, louder this time. Jake's gaze slid to him. "Or what you'll call the police." "I'll call the sheriff," Dad said. "The one who's been watching you screw up for months." Jake froze. He hadn't known. He hadn't known the sheriff had been getting complaints. He hadn't known his reputation wasn't spotless anymore. He hadn't known he was already one mistake away from losing everything. And Lily, shaking, trembling from behind me, whispered, "Please, Jake, just go." Something inside him snapped. "Oh, I'll go," he snarled, "but this isn't over." He pointed at me. "You think coming back changed anything? You're wrong." Then he pointed at Lily. "And you owe me, you belong—" "Finish that sentence," I said sharply, stepping in front of her. "And I swear I'll bury your career tomorrow." His mouth closed. He stared at me, hatred simmering beneath the surface like heat rising off asphalt. Then he backed away, slowly, deliberately, but not before delivering one final promise. "You'll regret this." He turned, got into his cruiser, slammed the door, and roared away, tires burning marks into the gravel driveway. The moment he was gone, the house exhaled. And so did we. By morning, word had spread. People in town were whispering about the scene at our house. Some said Jake had checked on us. Some said he lost control. Some said they'd heard yelling. A few said nothing at all. And those silently watching were the ones who scared me most. I didn't wait for the whispers to settle. By 10 a.m., I was sitting in the sheriff's office with Lily beside me and the flash drive in my hand. Sheriff Daniels was a tired man in his 60s with permanent worry lines etched into his forehead. He listened. Really listened. He watched Lily cry. He watched me hold her hand. And then he plugged in the flash drive. The recording played. Jake's voice, angry, controlling, manipulative. Clear, undeniable enough to end a career. When it was over, the sheriff leaned back in his chair and rubbed his face with both hands. "Jesus," he muttered. "I knew he had issues, but this—" He looked at us. "I'm opening an investigation." Relief hit me like a wave. Lily broke down. I caught her before she fell. "It's over," I whispered. "It's finally over." "It's not," she sobbed. "It's not over until the town knows." She was right. So we did something neither of us ever thought we'd do. We stood in front of a Willow Creek town hall and told the truth. Not with drama, not with exaggeration, not with vengeance in our throats. Just truth. Raw, unpretty, undeniable. People listened, some with disbelief, some with shock, some with shame, realizing they had ignored the signs. A few, too few, apologized. Most stayed silent. But silence finally felt like victory. Because silence wasn't protecting him anymore. It was exposing him. Jake was suspended by evening, under investigation by morning. By the end of the week, people didn't whisper about me anymore. They whispered about him. What he'd done. What he'd risked. What he'd tried to hide. What we had uncovered. And when the dust settled, I packed my suitcase, Mom cried. Dad hugged me longer than he ever had. Lily walked me to the car. "You saved me," she whispered. "No," I said, "we saved each other." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Will you come back?" she asked. "Maybe," I said, "but not to stay." She smiled sadly. "Dallas feels more like home now, huh?" "No," I said gently. "I feel more like home now." She laughed softly. "I'm proud of you." "I'm proud of you too." When I got into the Mustang, she leaned in. "Promise me something," she said. "Don't be the good girl anymore." I smiled. "I'm not," I said, "not anymore." I started the engine. The road stretched ahead, wide open and entirely mine. As Willow Creek shrank in the rearview mirror, I realized something I'd never understood before. Running away that first time had been fear, but leaving now, this was freedom. And this time I wasn't the runaway bride. I was the woman who came back, burned everything down, and walked away from the ashes without looking back.